My name is Michael Goldberg. I'm our executive director of the Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship here at Case Western Reserve University. We're thrilled to welcome Scott Himmel, who is a Cleveland-based entrepreneur and has been a great resource for a lot of my students over the years that have been crazy enough to want to take the voyage in food entrepreneurship, broadly speaking. All of our sessions are moderated by either students or, in the case of Michael Zhao, a former student. And Michael, as he'll get into today, is one of those crazy students that has also gone into the world of food entrepreneurship. Michael and a fellow student launched Red Heart while they were on campus, and it's been really fun watching their journey. And he's still out there trying to build his company. So I couldn't think of a better moderator today. I'll turn it over to Michael, who will engage Scott in conversation. And if you're live with us here on Zoom, just let Michael know if you have a question and he can call on you, or you can put a question in the chat. And if you're watching on LinkedIn Live, just put your question for Scott in the comment and we'll make sure that we feed that in. So thank you, Michael. Thank you, Scott. And I will turn it over to Michael.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. So as Michael mentioned earlier, my name is Michael Joe. I'm a recent Case grad. I majored in economics while I was there, and I'm also the co-founder of Red Heart, a startup that began on campus in August 2021. It's an honor and pleasure to be with you all today. So Scott was actually referred to me early on during my entrepreneur journey by Alex Yakubovich, who's also a Case alum entrepreneur who successfully sold his company, Scout RFP, for $540 million to Workday. Alex and Scott have been friends since way back. Welcome, Scott, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to chat with you. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Scott is the founder of HarvestOwl. To begin off, love to hear a little bit about your background of yourself and, of course, your company, HarvestOwl.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So, for as long as I can remember, I've been captivated by any type of business. I was that kid who was selling snacks and drinks at recreation softball games. When I turned 16 and I could drive, I started a deck pressure washing and sealing business. I just love the process of creating a new product or service that makes the world just a little bit better. After graduating from college, I started a company called campusmenus.com, ran it for about 4 to 5 years and then sold it. The spark for HarvestOwl actually came from Alex, who you just mentioned, who at the time was running a tech company over in Midtown. And he vented about the lunch process in his office. And what he was seeing was at 10 a.m., his developers weren't writing code. They were debating where to get lunch from. And the whole process drove him a bit crazy. Making matters worse, they'd be bringing in less healthy food that would put them all to sleep come 3 p.m. So to get the ball rolling, we launched a pilot test for 6 weeks with 3 companies to understand if this thing had legs. Today, our mission is to bring delight and good health to office workers across the country. We partner with forward-thinking companies like Vitamix, the Cavs, Marcus Thomas, to provide their team members with fresh, healthy, energizing lunches on a recurring basis. We work with roughly 70 companies, and we're really excited to continue expanding within Cleveland and beyond.
Yeah, thank you so much for that little introduction.
Sure.
So yeah, I'd love to break it down a little bit and go into a little depth in how does HarvestOwl actually work. I'd love to hear a little spiel on that.
Yeah, totally. So first step for us is we partner with the company. Once the company's on board, we set up a HarvestOwl refrigerator in their office, and we do a whole launch, and each team member will create a HarvestOwl account and manage their own orders. We deliver to most companies twice a week, and on each delivery day, our driver comes by and places HarvestOwl trays into the fridge. I actually have one right here if you want to kind of get a sense of it. This is a kind of one of the HarvestOwl trays. And all the packaging that I just showed you is reusable. So when our drivers are dropping lunches off, they're also bringing dirty trays back to our kitchen where they'll get washed and reused. So we just try to minimize how much waste we're producing in the process of serving our guests. And it's a shared pricing model. So each of our partner companies contributes to the cost of each lunch on behalf of their team members. It ranges from a few bucks to them picking up the whole tab.
Wow, that's very interesting. Super cool business model. If everyone wants to learn more about it, love to get some information from you or put in the chat. But next question, really quick, is we often think about failure in entrepreneurship and in life in general. So love to ask you the question about what types of failure or setbacks you've experienced during your journey and what valuable lessons you've learned from these.
You know, I think the most meaningful failure, kind of since starting HarvestOwl, is spending a bit too much time outside of my areas of strength. You know, I love sales and marketing. I love crafting the guest experience. I love designing the software that runs our whole business. I think these are the areas where I'm able to provide the most value. But early on, the majority of my time was just getting sucked into the day-to-day operations, getting launches out, getting them where they had to be at the right time, making everything work. And you know, I've made a lot of progress in this, in this area over the years. And to be honest, I still have more progress there's more work to do here and more progress to make to get a higher percent of my time shifted into those areas of strengths. You know, I think the solution here for us is getting the right people on our team and delegating tasks to our team members that are aligned with their own strengths.
Very awesome. Cool. So yeah, I mean, speaking of failure, we'd love to kind of tie into things in terms of in the COVID world right now. We're in a pandemic for the past 2 years. It's been obviously difficult for everyone, but particularly as really tough on the food industry. So speaking of failure, I'd love to hear what type of difficulties you faced during the time in COVID and what did you go about those as well?
Where to begin? Yeah, so I mean, you're right. I mean, the food industry as a whole was hit pretty hard during the pandemic, and I think our business model specifically, because we serve offices, was especially hard hit, and so it wasn't pretty. You know, I think two key takeaways come to mind for me. The first is the importance of acting quickly and being open to change. When COVID first set in and we started getting all the office email closure, or the emails announcing the closures, you know, our first move was to say, okay, well, how can we still serve our same guest base but at home? And before the pandemic, our name was HarvestOwl, and so we launched a service that we call HarvestOwl at Home that relied on, you know, third-party delivery partners to get the same food that we were already serving them to their homes. But within a matter of weeks, it became very clear that it wasn't going to be enough to help us survive the pandemic. The numbers just weren't quite big enough. A high percent of our guests lived in an area that was outside of a reasonable delivery zone, and so just as fast as we launched that service, we shut it down. I think the second key takeaway from our kind of experience working through the pandemic is to focus on your core competency. We saw at that point that every restaurant in the city was really pushing takeout and delivery, and we needed some compelling angle to cut through that noise. And you know, by focusing on our core competency, we recognize that what we do really well is we provide healthy food to a captive audience on a recurring basis. And we have, you know, we have the custom refrigerators, the technology, all the systems to deliver on that promise. And we realized the same service that we provided to office workers translates really well to large, high-end residential properties. And so we were able to initially reach out to 3 properties that really kind of fit this target. It was One University Circle, very close. Actually, these are all right by Case, Park Lane Villa and Centric, and they all said, "This is great. You know, we think it's a tremendous value add for our residents. We think it'll help us attract residents and retain the ones that we have, improve their quality of life living in this building." And we relaunched. We had shut down for a number of months, and we rehired our team and relaunched, focusing on these residential properties. And frankly, that revenue from those properties is what allowed us to survive the pandemic. You know, fast forward to where we are today, the pendulum for us has swung back more towards offices, but we do continue to serve those large residential properties as well.
That's very, very cool. It sounds like a really entrepreneur journey and pivoting and really looking at different types of ways to gain access to different types of opportunities. So very, very awesome. So I do want to mention to anyone on the call, if they have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand to ask a question directly. Moving on to the next question, really from me, is that in entrepreneurship, you require a lot of different tools and resources and different ways of gaining knowledge in learning the process of entrepreneurship in general. So what resources have shaped your perspective on running a business that you would recommend other entrepreneurs check out?
Yeah, I love reading and digesting different perspectives all the time. And I think three resources come to mind, and I think that they each of the three apply to us and really help us at a different stage of our growth. The first is the book Lean Startup, which I know is pretty well known at this point. But that book helped us create a structure for our pilot test, and it helped us find product market fit. And by doing that, by running that pilot test in a very thoughtful way, it gave us the confidence to officially launch our service and move forward with the business. The second one is a podcast called Manager Tools. And I haven't had I've had very few traditional jobs in my career. And I didn't have an experience of working for a great boss, a great leader who I could really learn from and model. And so by aggressively digesting the content from this podcast, it provided a really strong management toolkit that I lean on every single day. So I would definitely highly recommend that service. But also introduced me to the DISC behavioral profile tool, which also kind of factors into how I communicate with our team members and with other stakeholders. The third resource is another book, this one called Traction, and it focuses on EOS, which stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it's a comprehensive framework for how to run a business, and it covers everything from short and long-term goal setting to leadership meeting cadence, be it weekly, quarterly, annually. There's a number of other tools that are part of that framework that we lean on for how we operate our business.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I think I definitely look into all those tools for myself, especially starting a food startup as well.
Michael, I'm curious, just to kind of turn the table on you real quick. How would you answer that question? What's been helpful for you with Red Heart?
Yeah, so I mean, in the very beginning stage, obviously for tools is really looking for mentors and finding people and that type of resources. And obviously Veale Institute was amazing. Everyone there, Michael Goldberg, Bob Sopko, everyone really helped that. And obviously reaching out to you was really amazing too. And second was obviously just constantly learning too as well, and finding different knowledge in general for me as well. But yeah, thanks for asking me that question. I'd love to turn the table again and ask you, based off of what we talked about just now. Obviously, this is a question that I've always been asked from everyone, all the mentors that I've reached out to, and they've always said that the food industry is known as one of the most grueling industries and toughest spaces to go into. So I'd love to ask you this: how did you decide to go into it?
I think I of course heard the same guidance from people in my life, and I think frankly I was just naive, and I just didn't believe how difficult it really is. I decided I was the right person to bring HarvestOwl to life because there's alignment with my experience and also what I find to be purposeful. I have experience developing software. I have experience working around the restaurant industry, and I believe strongly in the power of food to improve health and overall quality of life. And so there's a strong purpose element for what I'm for what we're doing right now. And yeah, so just kind of looking at looking at those stars aligning, I decided to move forward despite the difficulty of the space. And kind of like we talked about yesterday, I know with your shift to producing the nourishing cookies versus prepared meals, it strikes me as being moving in the right direction in terms of getting away from that day-to-day difficulty of fresh food production and more towards a model that's a bit easier to scale. So I commend you on that pivot.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, it was a very good learning experience for us to be partnered with the school meal plan and learning how difficult it is, and it was very eye-opening in terms of learning, I guess, like how much work it needs every single day, how much tasks that we have to learn as well. So yeah, kudos to you, honestly, for being able to continue the work that you put in every single day. But love to move on to the next question. This leads into almost, I guess, the entrepreneurship skill set. Obviously, we talked about the knowledge and the tools that we've learned. But what skill did you have to develop almost that you think entrepreneurs really need to use to become successful?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is emotional resilience. Our business, I think, like we just talked about, our business has a lot of moving parts, and things go wrong, big and small, all the time. I mean, everything from trucks breaking down to, losing a key team member, a big sale that doesn't go your way, landlord issues, coolers breaking down, delivery delays. I just, you name it. I feel like we've seen it over the past, years that we've been operating. And early on, these things would really knock me down, and it'd take me a long time to recover. Now I don't fall quite as hard, and I think I rebound a lot quicker than I did early on. And I think it's a large part is just because of experience. I've seen a lot at this point, and I know that it's just a setback, and that we'll work through it. I think there's also some things that we've done that I've begun to do more proactively to manage stress. Things like breathing exercises, meditation, yoga, being very active. So yeah, I think that definitely is the I think a big change that I noticed today versus where I was at when I first got started. And another mantra that I find that I'm always pretty often saying to myself is just that when one door closes, another door opens. And I think I find some comfort in that when we're dealing with some kind of setback.
That's a very, very beautiful motto. We do have a question from the audience. And the question is that you mentioned your pilot tests and market fit to see if the idea had legs. How did that test go, and what kind of things did you learn from it?
Yeah, sure. So it was done. We ran it in a very, very manual way. So this was, before we wrote a single line of code, and it was pretty much me, and I found a chef who was working with us just on his time off. He had still had a full-time job, and we approached it. We provided the same experience that we ultimately ended up providing today by leveraging software, but we did it all just manually behind the scenes during that pilot test. So for example, today when our guests go through it, when they onboard, they go through a series of questions and we learn about their style of eating, and we send them a personalized menu every Friday for the upcoming weeks. There's this Pandora for lunch engine that's part of our service today. During the pilot test, we provided the same the same experience, but instead of software doing all that work, it was me, with little dossiers and every single guest that we were serving, going through and manually, figuring out what we wanted to recommend to that guest for the next week. And it's funny, the way that my mind was working during that pilot to do that work ended up being the foundation for how we wrote the software, ultimately to work once we officially launched. But the key variables that we were looking to understand, were one, what percent of guests in a given company would sign up for the service? How often would they order? What would the average check be? How long do deliveries take? Would they stay with the service? What would our retention be? And these were all variables that we really needed to develop a model to evaluate the viability of the whole concept. So rather than just kind of plucking these variables out of thin air, we were able to take the actual data from the pilot test and use that data to really model out the whole business and determine that we wanted to move forward with it. Yeah, so I hope that addresses kind of the way that we approach the pilot. And I'm thinking more as I'm just talking here. The key idea from Lean Startup is to identify what your leap of faith assumptions are, and then just craft that experiment, that pilot to help either validate or disprove them. Yeah, that was our mindset. And we had guests who were really sad when that 6-week period, 6-week pilot test ended, because we stopped it for a number of months. And one of the criteria that I thought about before deciding to move forward with this was the idea that I wanted to create a service that was so special that if it were gone, our guests would truly miss it. And it was really neat to see that people really were bummed when it stopped. It wasn't even that great at that point. So yeah, that's how we approached the pilot.
That's very, very, very awesome. Really, once again, reinforces the entrepreneur side of things, where you bring your hands in and do the dirty work yourself. So very, very awesome. We have a question coming from Ashley. If you want to unmute yourself and give a little introduction to yourself as well.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Ashley Weingart, founder at Perfectly Imperfect Produce. Nice to see everybody. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Ashley.
Wanted to ask a question about your fundraising journey. As a food entrepreneur in Northeast Ohio, I've found that to be one of the most challenging parts of my journey, since my background is not necessarily from a finance or accounting background. I've found that a lot of the funding locally is more towards the healthcare and technology industries. So just wanted to learn a little bit more about how much you've had to put in personally, or what sort of resources you've leaned on locally with regard to fundraising.
Yeah, sure. Ashley, thanks for the question. Happy to elaborate on that. So when we first got started, I made a pretty significant personal investment in the business, and we also got SBA funding through Huntington. And then about a year or two into the business, we raised some money from friends and family, and that was structured as a convertible note, which ultimately converted to equity in the years ahead. We, like you said, like your experience, Ashley, we didn't have a whole lot of luck, working with, the venture style groups in Cleveland. We also didn't push it too hard, but we did find that the interest was, like you said, was primarily focused on more tech types of pure tech plays. I think you can make the case that there's a strong tech component to what we're doing, but at the end of the day, we're not a sole tech play. In a way that would check the boxes for some of the groups in town. But I think we did receive, I think, a lot of support just with introductions to angel investors in the area. And I felt like even if the meeting didn't result in an investment, it resulted in at least an introduction to someone else. And the support from our investor group has been really meaningful, just as advisors to our business.
Really quick follow up on Ashley's question here. Would love to hear your perspectives on I guess, like a lot of people say smart money, and you mentioned this, that your investors are a good resource that you have personally. Love to hear your insights on how to find the right person for investors. not just taking their money and using it for, your own use, but, also like, yeah, the knowledge behind people is very, very valuable as well. So.
Yeah, got it. I think to be candid, Michael, I don't think we've done a great job of this, to be perfectly straightforward. I think that we do have some investors that that have been able to, for a certain period of time, I was meeting with them every month, and there was accountability, and it was very, very helpful to have that resource. I don't think we've done enough of that. I think we have dropped the ball a bit in terms of how frequent we are with our investor communication. I think ideally, we're sending out a quarterly update. We're making it very clear, how we're performing relative to our KPIs. We're making it very clear what our needs are and how they can help. So ideally, we would be doing that. I think we have a lot of room to grow and to improve in terms of what we're actually doing, in terms of year to year with our investor communication.
Got it. Thank you. We do have a question from Michael Goldberg. If you want to hop on and ask your question.
Sure. Great. Thanks, Michael. Everyone's favorite topic, probably in most industries, but probably food industry, people. You mentioned, and thank you for sharing the journey, particularly during COVID and the pivot. I thought was super interesting. And, one of the comments you had made was during kind of after a pause, getting people back, and wondering if you can share insights on talent retention in a market in which it seems challenging for so many entrepreneurs, but particularly in service industries like food, to retain talent.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. It's been very, very difficult for us to find, where as we grow and we skill back up, finding the right people to help us operate the business has been very challenging. And we've seen wages, our team member wages going up quite a bit. We recently added health insurance. We have a community garden now for our team members. We're doing all we can to provide a very, just a very positive work environment. We've had the most success in terms of finding new team members by getting referrals from our existing team, by just reaching out to those in our network who can make referrals, by proactively reaching out to people on through LinkedIn, through Indeed, who, based on what we see in the resume, we think would be a good fit for our team. We've had a lot less success just putting that up and hoping that the right leads come in. We've been, our leadership team has been very aggressive recently with being on the lookout when if you're at a store, if you're at a restaurant, and you receive, you see someone and you receive really warm service, and there's a chance that person might be a good fit for our culture, to say, hey, I really appreciate the way that you handle this interaction. Here's my card. If you're ever looking for a different role, reach out. So we're really trying to pull out all the stops in terms of finding the right people to help us grow. I think that a number of food service workers have just left the industry, and they haven't come back, and they probably won't. So I think it's really critical just to create the right culture, and have a multi-pronged marketing approach to attract the right people.
Thanks for that. We do have another question from the audience. How do you stay connected to your customers to ensure your menu stays fresh and demand doesn't decline?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was talking to my brother over the weekend. My brother runs more of a traditional brick and mortar restaurant group, and he just was mentioning how difficult it is for them to kind of really know truly how his guests feel about a meal. Because when a manager walks over to a table, most people, including myself, will be like, "Oh yeah, everything's great," even if that's not truly how you're feeling. I think what's unique about our model is that we solicit feedback online through our website, and we get a ton of it. I mean, we're seeing it in real time. I mean, the first day of the week, we're sending out a new dish. we can go on there within, and see, 10, 20, 30 guest comments about that dish and know just where we stand. And we can make changes for the next that'll apply the next day to that dish to address the issues that our guests shared. So I think there's a lot of back and forth with guest feedback. And when our guests do write in and share their opinion, we're very intentional about making sure they feel heard. We're sending them a response, asking for clarification, more information as warranted, and just ensuring that they know that we value and are taking their perspective seriously and that we're on their side.
Thanks for that, Scott. I do want to kind of have a build-up question on that. So I was wondering what you think of the market now in terms of food in the food industry. Have you seen an upward trend in terms of health consciousness? And obviously in your menu, you have to almost pivot and incorporate these, I guess, like there's like the vegetarian diet, there's a vegan diet. Love to hear your insights on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. We're seeing, I guess we're seeing a lot of just more people with a specific diet that they're following, whether it's paleo or 30, vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, keto. And the way that we've responded to that is by adding certain items that are always on our menu that can check a lot of different boxes. So the majority of our menu will change every single week to keep the service fresh and exciting. But we have certain standbys that are always there. For example, we recently added a salad that we call the Doctor's Everyday Salad. It was inspired by Mark Hyman, the functional medicine doctor with Cleveland Clinic, and it's spinach, it's kidney greens, it's romaine, it's broccoli, cherry tomatoes, chickpeas, pumpkin seeds, served with a pack on the side of extra virgin olive oil, balsamic vinegar, some pink Himalayan sea salt. And the guests can add chicken, they can add grass-fed steak, they can add wild salmon to it. And the guest has full control over what what that final dish is. And no matter which of the diets that you're on, we can make that salad work for you. There's also a bowl version of that as well. And so, we've just been a bit more conscious of kind of ensuring with every menu that we have options that will appeal to our full guest base. The other thing that we do, kind of in that same spirit, is we segment our guest base, and so we have our super healthy guests that we call Health and Hallie. There's Main Street Mitch, there's Convenience Chris, there's Adventurous Adam, and these are personas that our team talks about as though they're real people. And with every menu that we develop, we're very thoughtful about having options that will appeal to each of that guest type. I think by creating those complete narratives, those complete personas, it's allowed us to, I think, be pretty effective in ensuring that all of our guests have an option to choose from.
That's really cool. Hearing this out, I'm sure many of the audience here are starting to get hungry as lunch is approaching. Thank you for that. And I think we do have another question in the audience. Have you considered partnerships with restaurants to feature their branded specialty or famous chef?
It's a great idea. We about every quarter or so we do that. We actually, on the menu next week, we have a dish that was designed by Bomba Taco that our kitchen produces. We've done the same thing with Doug Katz. We've done it with Flour in Moreland Hills. We actually also have one coming up with Black Cat fermented hot sauce. That chef is developing a dish that our kitchen will execute. So it's just a really fun way to experience different chef creations via HarvestOwl. And it's also a win-win in terms of exposure for the restaurant or the chef. And then on our end, it's a way just to create buzz and create excitement about our service.
Awesome. All right. Well, Mindy, do you have another question?
I just had one question with the co-branding of the restaurants. It made me wonder a little bit. You talked early on about the stress of being an entrepreneur, and as you progressed, coping techniques and eating healthy, but thinking about, taking moments and being mindful, and those my words, but is there an opportunity to take the lunch and embed, cards or reminders, today's going to be a good day, smiley, I don't know, silly little things, but something that you enjoy your lunch, and then here's something you can open up, an envelope or whatever at mid-afternoon, as a pickup or a reminder. Have you done anything in that space?
I love that, and we do. So every our logo, our mascot, we call her Mama Owl, and she's this maternal figure. And so harking back to when Mama put a note in your lunch, every lunch that we serve comes with a little note that's just written to inspire wellness in a fun, playful way. And kind of like you said, I mean, it's everything from just a quick inspirational quote to a healthy recipe, to a breathing exercise, to a spotlight on some event in Cleveland that has a wellness connection to it, a farmer's market roundup, all that. And we change it every single week. And we hope that it just adds a little bit of extra delight, to our guest experience, kind of like with a fortune cookie. So I agree with what you said. And if you have any, we're always looking for new ideas. So if any other specifics come to mind, we would love to hear.
Well, I can tell you one idea that I would love, dealing with aging parents and my in-laws using like Meals on Wheels. I would love to have a healthier alternative, and so if I could have access, like if their senior apartment complex, had this facility, I would help pay, on a subscription basis for them to get the healthy food. I mean, that would be, if you're not getting into the delivery side of the business, that would be a huge help to focus on senior. I know they won't spend the money on themselves, but oftentimes family members will.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you for your question and your response, Scott. So we do have one more, we have time for one more question if anyone has a question. If not, I would love to end the call with a question of myself that I often hear from Guy Raz on the podcast, How I Built This. How much do you believe your success so far is contributed by luck, and how much of it do you believe is by hard work?
Well, first off, Michael, I love Guy Raz. It's one of my favorite podcasts, How I Built This. Anyways, I would say 80-20 in terms of 80% being luck, 20% being hard work. I feel like I kind of hit the human lottery by, being born in the United States to two loving parents. And there's been so many breaks that we've gotten along the ways, and so many people who have made our success possible and who have supported us. And I certainly think that perseverance and hard work is a big part of it, but I think that's, overshadowed significantly by just getting lucky.
Sounds great. Well, thank you, Scott, so much. I'm gonna turn it over to Michael Goldberg again. But yes, pleasure to speaking with all of you, and thank you, Scott.
Thanks for moderating, Michael.
We should have we should have all been together eating a HarvestOwl lunch. There clearly will have to be a follow-up session with you, Scott, where we can break bread together. But that's
support that.
Well, thank you, Michael, for moderating. It was great to have a student entrepreneur, and particularly someone working in the space, in dialogue with Scott today. And Scott, thank you for what you're doing in the community. It was funny. I was looking at our LinkedIn. We have something like 250 mutual connections on LinkedIn. Of course, meeting only at least virtually today on today's session. But clearly, you've been a leader in our entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Cleveland. Exciting to have you share your story as part of our speaker series today. And again, do look forward to meeting in person and having you on campus at some time soon.
Sounds great. I'd love to continue talking with working with your community, and hope to meet in person soon.
Great. So we do have another session scheduled as we sort of end our summer sort of section of the speaker series. On August 17th at noon, alum Justin Belante, who's the founder and CEO at BioIQ, who recently sold his company, will be joining us to talk about his journey. And then we've got a really vibrant series of speakers planned for the fall. Stacy and I are getting together later today to keep working through our speakers. So we're really thrilled to have a number of folks here in the Cleveland community, but also our alumni community outside of Cleveland join. So stay tuned for scheduling and look forward to seeing you all soon. So Scott and Michael, thank you again for the time, and thanks to everybody for joining today.